Solar Group presents. This was once just a dream of the skies, the freedom of flight, of round-the-world journeys. Yet we've made it happen. But what did it take? Our dreams became our goals. Our concepts turned into our plans. Our ideas have transformed into a roadmap and production technology. And the years ahead are booked out with development and construction, components and materials, model manufacturing and testing. All this marks the progress from dream to result. Join us on this journey. Solar Group presents a new generation of airships. The best way to predict the future is to create it, so let's do so together.
Friends, well, hello again. It's been a while since we've seen each other. Today, you're at another webinar of the new Generation Airships project. As always, I'm here with you, Gennady Babanin and Fyodor Konstantinov.
Yes, friends, greetings to everyone.
Friends, let's start by asking you to please write in the chat how the video and audio quality are, and feel free to ask any questions you have in the comments right away. Today, we'll be discussing our recent exhibition at the Dubai Airshow, which was attended by the company AERONOVA. We'll find out all the latest news and important details about how everything went, talk about our current projects in progress, discuss the AEROLÖT, the NOVA-2, and also look at the tasks and challenges our team is facing in the near future. Fyodor, where should we start? Hello?
Hello, Gennady. It's been a while since we've seen each other. Wherever you want. Dubai, I suppose.
Yes, I think everyone will be interested to hear how our trip went, how the company did, and what feedback we received.
I think we already talked about this a bit during the exhibition itself. We even had a webinar about it. Yes, friends, what do I want to say to you all today? You're watching this right now, but please, I encourage you, send in your questions because I'll tell you all about Dubai in 3 minutes and about AEROLÖT in a minute and a half. So what exactly happened in Dubai? Honestly, I only just recently managed to get some sleep. Even before Dubai, the race started with preparing materials, handouts, mock-ups, videos, a whole bunch of things, really. But in the end, what do I want to say? We were honestly worried that we'd be out of place at the exhibition, that everything about us would be wrong, but it turned out that we actually prepared like champions. Yes, everything was truly great for us, the booth was absolutely awesome, and we attracted an incredible amount of attention. We did everything right with the booth. We carefully hung up the model, set up those huge screens, and we could be seen from everywhere. It was really fantastic. And we signed up for the pitch event. The fact that Milad was actually speaking in the main hall, that was really awesome too. And by the way, we later found out, we sent a photo back then, and I think I sent a video as well, that AERONOVA was officially listed among the sponsors. That was all because we signed up for the pitch, and for that we actually had to get some sort of extended package, which was required. It wasn't much more expensive at all, but for some reason it really seems like people just don't want to present these days. And that's why our company was added to the list of sponsors. It was quite flattering. A company that's been a sponsor of an international aviation exhibition for a year. Yeah, it's pretty funny, honestly. So, what's up? Well, we just recently, literally just yesterday, finished working through the entire contact list. We ended up with a little over 200 contacts in total. We classified them by importance, those who wanted something from us and those we wanted something from. For example, in terms of, there were a lot of manufacturers who approached us. There was one particularly large and well-known Korean manufacturer present there that specializes in making both fuselages and wings for Boeing aircraft. And when they saw the airship, their CEO immediately ran over, visibly excited, and said, "Wow, we've truly mastered airplane manufacturing. But this," he said with genuine excitement, "we want to make this too. Just put us down. We'll do absolutely anything you need." So we started a dialogue with them, little by little, and in the end, after some discussion, they were ready to take on the production. Of course, everyone wants to make airships these days. By the way, as we recently realized, Milad found this website just yesterday, where SpaceX engineers are currently working on a new project. So we went through the list together. It was split into those who want to buy airships. The ones who want to buy outright are mostly interested in the so-called NOVA-01 and that particular size category. A small advertising airship is currently in high demand, and there are even orders for 25 units at a time, and close to 100. How realistic those are, whether they're real or not, needs to be looked into. And there are also orders for 1, 2, or 3 airships. In our company, among the airship specialists, Boris Alexandrovich and Vadim Vasilievich, there was never any strong conviction that an airship of such a small size could truly be in demand. Only Dmitry Sergeyevich Kamel genuinely believed in it. And Artyom was the loudest of all, always shouting that it would be important. And now he walks around with his nose in the air. I told you so. Yes. So, are we going to start mass production of small devices? Basically, yes, we are going to start mass production of small devices because there really is good demand for them, and this is not the NOVA-01. NOVA-01 is essentially a dynamic copy of the NOVA-2 airship. The airship, yes, will be of that size.
Is it going to be cigar-shaped as well?
Of course, the design is cigar-shaped and exceptionally well-balanced. That is all quite clear. The only distinction was between saying, I just want the advertisement to be printed on it, and asking, can we turn the whole thing into a giant television? And we are currently working on that particular question as well. And these pixel screens, the Chinese have gone far ahead with these pixel screens, but even here in our country, they're being made as well. And the grid of these pixels, specialists now believe, won't weigh that much. We'll have to make the airship a bit bigger, but something could come out of it. It would be amusing, of course, a flying television in the shape of a cigar.
And are we working in this direction somehow, testing something?
We bought several flexible screens that we will install on the NOVA-01, but again, it's all just for testing purposes for now. They're Chinese and have a silicone base, meaning there's the LED mesh itself, and then to give it, let's say, all-weather capability and protection from mechanical damage, it's encased in thick silicone, which makes it quite heavy, but it can also be made into thin films. Here in Russia, they make them into thin films. That makes them much lighter. This is just the first prototype we're making for NOVA-01. But overall, yes, the task now is to build, well, not exactly build, but to set up serial production of small devices, because there is a real customer for them. And one of the real customers is, of course, advertising companies, marketing agencies, and similar organizations. There will also be a large-scale, prominent aviation exhibition event in Egypt next September, and the organizers of the exhibition itself, who are responsible for coordinating and managing the event, want to purchase 1 or several units, 2 or 3, not by the dozens. Such airships, in order to effectively sell advertising space to the various exhibition participants and companies on this airship, approached us with this particular request. They explained their intentions, saying, they're looking at the NOVA-01, it's flying right now. We began to explain to them in more detail. Let's figure out together what the legislation and regulatory framework is like in your country, and how it might affect this project.
Just do it.
Yes. Don't worry, he says, offering a reassuring smile. It'll fly. By the way, I have to admit, it would be really exciting and quite remarkable if that actually happens. As for the price, I know. We've been keeping you in suspense about the price for a while now, and the local clients have also been curious, especially when they asked us directly about it. Basically, we experimented a bit with the audience there, because a lot of people are interested. And we mentioned different price ranges, starting from $25,000 per unit up to $100,000. We carefully observed a variety of different reactions from people and realized several important things. More precisely, we figured out the approximate price point that does not scare off potential clients for a small advertising airship. And we also understood that it is indeed possible to produce it serially at that price, while still maintaining a good profit margin. So in the end, everything will work out just fine. There were other contacts as well. For example, Lamage, a major international company involved in construction in Dubai, and there aren't many of those. All the company names are written on the buildings there. Anyway, they became increasingly interested in the airships. They sat down and looked at this large, impressive screen. We had some couches with a table set up underneath it. So you can really do it like that? Of course, they were speaking in their own language. We said, well, yes. And there are 2 airships flying over Dubai. Just like that? We said, yes. A 2-story hotel, really? We're like, yes. What do they say? Naturally, what's needed for this? Boris Alexandrovich joins in from the legal and certification perspective and starts explaining. We share our vision with them in detail regarding the minimum required infrastructure, as well as what would be necessary and essential in order to at least localize assembly at that particular location or site. And there's a connection. He said, any land, any hangars, we'll take care of everything. Let's meet and work through all of this. In other words, they're not taking on the order for the airship itself. They say, this is definitely the future and it's absolutely needed here, without a doubt. If it's necessary, and it truly is, we hear you loud and clear. Don't worry at all about the hangars or the docks. We'll handle everything for you. That's in terms of the design, the financing, and the construction process. They are ready to invest in the infrastructure, and that will only benefit us if we have a large hangar where all of this can take place. In other words, an investor in real estate has now joined the project. They also collaborate with another large Russian company of ours. It was amusing to discover mutual acquaintances. These are our local people. A local Russian company that also deals with aviation hangars. We will continue working with them moving forward. So the Saudis came to us with a very similar request, looked carefully at these pictures, sat down with us, and had a detailed conversation. And we told them as well, before you, the guys from Dubai actually came to us and said, we'll handle the construction. No, we'll take care of everything ourselves. They are specifically interested in the process of technology transfer. They have clearly understood all of the significant advantages and benefits of airships. Honestly, as you walk around the exhibition, there are no airships to be seen, only we have one on display. There was one small distinctive French stratospheric airship on display. It's from a large French space organization, something like NASA or Roscosmos, but French. And they've been trying to make this stratospheric airship for a very long time, already 10 years. It was just this small one on display. So aside from this little stand, no one else had anything related to airships. Only we had one, and naturally it drew considerable attention. And as I understood it, the Saudis were walking around with exactly this kind of request to find something new. Of course, there were also unmanned taxi drones of the quadcopter type present. They looked quite futuristic, almost like something out of a science fiction movie. Actually, they were more like octocopters. Yes, there were a lot of them there. But it already felt like the market was pretty much occupied. It hasn't fully formed yet, but already many people are involved. Some are focused on the vehicles themselves, others on the software for them, and others on the infrastructure. But here the field is completely open, and it's not just them who noticed this. Many people pointed it out. Businessmen would come up who are involved in, what do you call it? Well, basically there's the core business, say car manufacturing, and then there are 1,000 other businesses around it, starting from sales, technical maintenance, and everything else, even car washes. The periphery, so to speak. Businessmen who are specifically creating aviation-related peripheral businesses would often come up and say, guys, this is truly a gold mine. You have absolutely hit the jackpot, and we are with you. They would introduce themselves, hand out their business cards, and say, everyone understood what stage we were at. We didn't hide anything from anyone. We'd only been around for a year. In that year, we formed a design bureau. We have a small dynamic model flying. We already have the 2000 model in deep development and at the initial stage of production. We have such and such plans. Everyone is waiting, basically, both businessmen and buyers. All of them are in anticipation. And the Saudis say, this is all great, but how about the same thing, only in our country? We're like, well, now, what do you mean, only in your country? They say, well, come over, we'll show you that it's a truly different and unique country. Have you already talked to anyone in Dubai, gotten a sense, roughly speaking, of what mechanisms of interaction might exist here, what kinds of support measures, funding, and so on? He says, it's one thing here, but everything is completely different with us. Our country is much wealthier. It's much easier for us to get various permits and so on. You just need to come to us. We'll build you hangars, we'll build you factories, anything as long as airships are produced in Saudi Arabia. It was a very intense contact. We worked very closely with this person. He is the owner of one of the largest logistics companies in Saudi Arabia. We took a brief examination, and overall, it's an extremely wealthy company. As a matter of fact, he wasn't even speaking on his own behalf, but rather on behalf of the business and the government as a whole. So here's the proposal. He said, just send me those videos you have, the ones people are scrolling through, and I'll show them to whoever needs to see them. We only sent it yesterday. Guilty, we dragged it out. But it's nothing serious. He said he's ready to come to Russia. He really needs this. He also realized that you can invest money here, and it will come back with an enormous return. Obviously, we need to fully understand what technology transfer actually is. He'll buy it from us, take it away. It's a straightforward arrangement. We've told everyone about this. He's not the only one who's approached us with such an offer. Of course, when someone of a high level approaches, they're not particularly concerned with the details, in most cases. In their minds, absolutely anything is possible. And it's true, anything is possible. But even this idea of anything is possible follows a certain logical path. You can't just gather a group of people, bring them in, and expect them to build a car if they've never done it before. Typically, it starts with you bringing it in and them attaching just the wheels. Next, they add the doors, and gradually, step by step, they move to full assembly and eventually begin localizing some parts. Of course, we explained all of this to them. For example, right now we're assembling the NOVA-2, we're testing everything out, refining it into a market-ready product, certifying it here, for instance, and then we can move production there and set up an assembly line, initially shipping components from here. He was like, these are all really minor details. You don't need to explain all that to me. Let's just build it here. Well, in general.
And for the most part, what purposes were they considering them for? Also for advertising, or?
The Saudis, no. For them, he was looking at it from the perspective of large cargo, 30 to 60 tons and beyond. Anything smaller didn't interest him. And for that same size range, they were specifically interested in tourist and cruise applications, passenger ones. Yes, that's when you have a big liner, lots of people, cabins, restaurants, promenade decks. He also looked at the screen and said, just like that, we'll be hovering over the city. We were like, well, yeah. And he was like, yeah, we have to. People from funds approached us, from big quasi-governmental ones too, and from Dubai, and from Dubai and Saudi Arabia. For some reason, they were looking. We exchanged contacts as well. How do they usually operate? There were fund managers walking around, also actively looking for projects. They would come up and immediately ask, what stage are you at? When will production of such and such devices begin? How do you estimate the production cost? What production run are you ready for? Meaning, how many units per month? What will be the selling price? We would start philosophizing with them about this because we didn't have a concrete answer, for example, regarding the 10-ton model. They would roughly estimate things like, so the margin is this much, the turnover is that much. That means we can allocate this amount. Here's my business card. Give me a call. They would just make rough calculations and evaluate the projects. It varied a lot. And there was also an Iranian man who came up to me. He was originally from Iran, but now he's a Canadian citizen. He's also someone who built his fortune with his own hands. And now, not only is he wealthy himself, but he also manages a large fund. He got so interested in what we were doing that he came to see us several more times after the exhibition. We even had a chance to talk with him at the hotel. And it wasn't just him coming by. He was really quite persistent about it too. And we were like, are you ready to invest in a Russian company? He said, well, how much does a Russian company need? We explained to him how everything is set up with us. Right now, this is how things are. And he said, well, not more than $1 million, guys, whether it's Russian or international. Awesome. So we're still in touch with him for now. And most likely he'll be flying here in the near future. In short, their investment fund is now also actively extending its interest and focus to Saudi Arabia. In the end, we managed to successfully connect several different projects together, basically. So, In Dubai, a group of people has recently emerged, starting from the local legislative or executive authorities. I'm not really sure which specific branch. Basically, these are the officials who regulate takeoff and landing, issue flight permits, assign tail numbers, issue certificates, and so on. We managed to work out a sort of roadmap with them on how to legalize airships in Dubai, for example, those manufactured in Russia. Then people showed up who are ready to invest in infrastructure. There were also people who own land in Al Maktoum. This is a large, extremely powerful airfield that will soon become the biggest airfield, in fact, the largest airport in the United Arab Emirates. The exhibition was actually taking place right there at the time, and the owner came over and said, "I have land available in Al Maktoum. Do you need it?" We said, "Well, there are your fellow citizens who are ready to build something here." He replied, "I see no reason not to start." We said, "We don't see any reason either. Let's get started." So, yes, in Dubai, everyone is so particularly tight with money. I can give you land, I can build you a building, we'll certify it for you. But you have to find an internal client in Dubai yourself. I honestly do not remember anyone from Dubai actually wanting a dirigible. At least in my experience, but I'm just one of 7 people who handled the incoming requests. To summarize briefly, a complete and comprehensive plan has been developed for Dubai on how to turn AERONOVA, for example, into an international company officially based in Dubai, so that the vehicles produced by the company can be certified according to international standards. Like a truly international company, everything is clear there. What needs to be done, all the necessary contacts are in place, and there's a solid understanding of the process. We're going to get started. The entry there into Dubai will happen through drones. It turned out kind of strange. I can't remember if I mentioned it or not. As for the certification of manned vehicles, they handle the entire process completely turnkey, basically like outsourcing from start to finish. This is European and American certification, meaning they don't have their own certifying authority. They have agreements with ESA and the American FAA. So if they want to get certified in Dubai, it's the European or American agency that certifies them. This is for manned vehicles. As for unmanned vehicles, they have their own internal legislation. And what's most amusing is that Boris Alexandrovich argued with them for a very long time. It's a play on words, yes. He says, "That's impossible." And they reply, "Well, that's how it is." They certify unmanned vehicles themselves, including unmanned taxis that people ride in. In our view, an unmanned vehicle is something for cargo, but no, these unmanned taxis in Dubai can also be certified. So, if our NOVA-2, for example, flies with 1 pilot and 5 passengers, then there are certification issues, because the American and European, well, it's possible, everything is possible, it's just long, expensive, and complicated. But if 6 passengers get into the NOVA-2 and it's unmanned,
then it's easy.
We get through. The very first thing, yes, that needs to be done, of course, is to carefully take that serial number of NOVA-01. Maybe it will eventually become the NOVA-02 or even NOVA-25. We'll see what happens. When it appears, we'll take it to Dubai, and there, at that location, we'll get a local certificate for it. A local certificate, as well as a registration number, are required. And then we can begin flights in Dubai, for example, for advertising purposes or for something else. This is because in Dubai, businesses often buy advertising space on airships. There are, I believe, 2 hot air airships currently flying there. It's essentially like a balloon with a burner. A hot air one, yes, a hot air one, only with propellers as well. There are actually quite a lot of these hot air airships around the world. It's a toy, big, beautiful, impressive, but still just a toy. It's not really an airship. But what did I like? The fact that in Dubai, the climate is like that overall. The air just stands still there all the time. But if the wind ever does blow, everyone will know. It starts now, ends tomorrow, and then there won't be any wind for a month. The fact that hot air airships there manage to fly between skyscrapers. In other words, the weather conditions are so ideal that even our small airships, say 200 cubic meter ones, can fly around easily. And as for the big ones, there are absolutely no problems at all. And since the hot air one can actually fly, we talked to them about this as well. They explained, our hot air airship operates a bit differently, but overall, everything is possible. There's really nothing to worry about. We'll start small, send a small one there, get it certified, and then open a company. Opening a company is a given from the very start. Then we will begin obtaining all the necessary local licenses and certificates there. In the future, we will develop detailed plans and strategies for a large-scale infrastructure, specifically tailored to certain types of vehicles. I think by that time we'll have already figured out which ones are needed, important, and so on. Since there were a lot of questions about private yachts after all, like cargo, that's cool. Monitoring, that's great. By the way, monitoring will most likely take off specifically in Dubai. I even forgot that there isn't actually a specific client for airships at the moment. There is, however, a client for monitoring purposes though. Their local military representatives came by to discuss the ongoing monitoring of the Persian Gulf region. I don't remember the exact number, but it's several dozen. Basically, they need to be quite large, at least 24 hours of monitoring with a clear workload. So there was already a discussion about how all of this would take place. Basically, I won't go into all the details, but it turns out that this kind of semi-military application does not actually require any sort of mandatory certification.
If it's equipment specifically for the military?
Well, if the military is actually buying it, yes, it's much simpler and
Noticeably fewer problems.
yeah. I'm just trying to remember who's in direct contact with them right now. Doesn't matter. Anyway, everyone's in touch. We've sent out all the emails about the next stage. There's absolutely no rush here because, as I keep saying, we've explained 100 times that it's our very first year, and right now we need to finish up NOVA-2, kind of settle in. So please don't hurry. But what's really cool is that there was a huge genuine interest from everyone. There was always a crowd of people gathered around our booth. At some point I even thought, can I take a break for a moment? How much longer can this possibly go on? Stop already. Yeah, they just keep coming and coming. They're interested and they just keep being interested. How about this? How about that? Are the webinars being translated?
Yes, I do think so, actually. You know, they definitely will be, eventually.
So, there were a lot of interested parties from India. They were the most curious, I'd even say persistent guys. Both onlookers and serious people would come up, trying to secure some unique rights to sell airships. Like, let me be the only one to help you manufacture them. They were really pushing for dealership rights. Yeah, and I didn't actually talk to the Indians myself. It just so happened that Vadim Vasilievich was the one dealing with all of them. Basically, every time an Indian would come up to him, he'd say, they've bought everything again. They bought the airships, they bought the business, they bought everything. Yeah, basically. But I'll repeat myself now. Just to be clear, I think I talked about this in that other webinar. What was the process really? We went to an exhibition in Dubai, so to speak, got a great deal of attention and interest, and made a lot of valuable contacts. Now we're entering what is often called the honeymoon phase of communication, which means that we're clarifying requests, specifying certain important parameters, or shaping the technical concept together. In other words, it's a kind of joint work to thoughtfully determine our next steps. If it's about construction, then it's about construction. If it's about transfer, then it's about transfer. It's a big job. It's not like you just walk into a store and buy a product off the shelf. Here, after all, everyone has different and unique interests. It's a rather complicated and challenging job. This important work is ongoing. And as a general rule, everything is already signed in advance. And at the next exhibition, most often someone holds out, and there's a kind of ceremonial, almost formal signing of some contract or agreement. There were a lot of contract signings by other companies. Check out the exhibition news. Airbus sold so much. It's not like it's a 5-day lottery for them. Sold to this gentleman. No, it's not like that. They had been working on this for many years beforehand. The project was only ceremonially signed there, and now we are entering a similar period. We now have all the important contacts, which serve as a strong foundation for our work. By the way, there were a lot of Europeans from the northern part of Europe who were also very interested. They said, cool, awesome, we really need this. NOVA-2, NOVA-8, we're ready to take it all. Let's get in touch and look into this further. Except for the British. For some reason, it was specifically the UK that reacted to us very harshly. They would turn away and leave, apparently for their own political reasons. They wouldn't let us into their booths. It was actually pretty funny. Really? Even that? Yes, they had one booth, either with radars or something like that. The exhibition was semi-military. About half of it was dedicated to anything that flies and carries something meant to harm someone. And they had a booth. I was looking at their brochures, they had an aerostat on them. I'm like, oh, a dirigible. Got it, a portable aerostat system. So I walk over and say, hello my friends. I pick up the thing and start looking at it. I see it's from the UK. I already figured out from how they reacted when they came to our booths what their attitude was. We didn't have any flags or anything at our booth, just AERONOVA, some people standing around, and Milad Zubkovich, who speaks good English. I deliberately spoke with the thickest Russian accent I could. When they realized we were Russian, the Brits reacted strangely. So I walk up and he goes, hello, trying to start a conversation with me. I realize I need to make contact with this person, so I slowly start talking to him. He picks up on my Russian accent and just starts yanking the brochure away, and I say, what are you doing? He goes, export is impossible? Export is impossible? Such a strange reaction. But everyone else was great, really cool. The Chinese guys were awesome too. By the way, we met some guys there. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the last webinar from Dubai or not. The thing is, we have a power unit that we've already designed and are starting to manufacture. It's a micro-turbine with a heat exchanger delivering 300 kilowatts of electric output, and it has a high-speed generator. Because of that, the 300 kilowatts fit into such a compact and exceptionally efficient size. We looked all over Russia, but no one here could make generators of that size for us. They could, but it would be something like 10 billion in 10 years. Well, roughly. And the Chinese said, well, how did the Chinese respond? We knew that they had them, that they were developing them for their own electric aviation as well, with plans to install them on turbines in the future. More precisely, they already have a turbine, but it doesn't have a heat exchanger. And turbines without a heat exchanger consume a lot of fuel. They're compact, powerful, everything's great, but their fuel efficiency is low. With a recuperator, the fuel efficiency actually achieves the level of regular ICE engines, piston and diesel engines. We knew they certainly had one, so we got in touch with them, and they were absolutely like, no problem. Of course, let's do it. But we needed to modify it slightly for our turbine, so we worked with them for a year, changed its characteristics, and even helped them improve it just a little bit, which was kind of funny. They were really surprised by our expertise in this area, and I spent 2 days there. You run to the test stand like it's your job, you're not just hanging around. You'd run over, someone was already there, and that was it. The exhibition was to start at 10. We'd arrive early at 9:30 and it was already packed. I kept thinking, how did they already let you all in? I was running by and noticed something looked a lot like our generator, really similar, just so much like it. And then I see Zubkovich leading them by the arm. He says, come to our stand. I ask, Vadim Vasilyevich, who are these people? He says, they came, took our brochure, and ran back to their place. Now they're sitting there studying it. And in one of our brochures, well, we had several handouts. One was basically about the team and the devices, about the NOVA-01, the aeroplane, the stratospheric probes, NOVA-8, NOVA-35, just about them. The second one was about the technology. What makes the airship good, eco-friendly, economical, how we differ from previous airships, and so on. There we had our 3D model of the microturbine. It was about the fact that the heart of future airships is hybrid, a fuel and power system based on microturbines with heat exchangers. And in this 3D model, naturally the generator is attached on the side. They took that paper with them and sat there like, so they showed our generator, put it on their own. Anyway, and Zubkovich, was there a misunderstanding? No, they were just like, not, hey, that's our 3D model. No. And Zubkovich brings them over to us and says, damn Fedya, these are the Chinese. I see them flipping through our thing, our brochure. I go up to them and say, so, interested? And they're like, what's this? He says, we're using this for our microturbine in China. You're working through intermediaries. We're the manufacturers. Why use intermediaries? You should have worked with us directly, and so on. Vadim Vasilyevich says, I don't understand. Let's go. They bring them to me. The Chinese are there, eyes wide, trying to explain. I say, hold on, slow down. Yeah, and I start explaining. Last year, around that time, we contacted you. 2 generators. He goes back and forth. We're also making 2 generators for that company. I say, open WeChat. He opens it, and right there I see our group chat, me and the microturbine guys. I say, so you're making them for us? He goes, brothers, brothers, and we all start hugging each other. So yeah, guys, it just turned out to be pretty funny in the end. Just last week they finally finished building the generators. They're making 2 generators and also 2 inverters for these generators, which is actually pretty cool. They already had them, but they modified them specifically for us because there were some particular requirements. They had to slightly lower the RPM, increase the output power a bit, and implement new operating modes in the inverters. And just last week they were finishing this up, and at the exhibition he says, come visit, we invited you after all. Are you coming to the tests? Of course I couldn't go because I was in Dubai. Right after I left Dubai, I came straight here because we're moving and there are lots of things going on right now, so it's been quite hectic. But our specialist, Igor, was already in China before I arrived, and he went there ahead of us to prepare everything. They were testing the generators in starter mode for now, so the microturbine, like any engine, needs to spin up, and for that it needs a starter generator. It operates both as a generator and as a starter, and last week they conducted tests in starter mode. That's it. There are videos and there are detailed reports. In short, everything was thoroughly confirmed and everything works exactly as it should. Next week they will begin the process of testing in generation mode. If everything goes well, the generator will be sent here as planned. That's just one of the amusing and interesting things that happened at the exhibition. So we walked around and carefully looked for similar setups. There simply aren't any available. There are regular turbines, which also have generators, but they provide much less power than we actually need. I think it's a Belgian company that manufactures them, and we approached them. Well, just scouting. By the way, attending the exhibition was very useful from a reconnaissance perspective, industrial espionage, seeing who's doing what, how much things cost, and so on. Basically, their system is a turbine, generator, controllers, control system, fuel system. In other words, a turnkey solution like that starts at $500,000.
Wow, that's really not bad at all.
Seriously, yes. Especially considering that theirs is extremely fuel hungry and has lower power. So, we're creating a product that will not only be competitive in our airships, but could also stand alone as a separate product on the market. Of course, that's still left to do. Right now, the most important stage is just beginning, the stage of manufacturing these microturbines. This part isn't easy either, but we'll talk about that with you in more detail later. Point. We need to get back to the exhibition. In general, all 5 days of the event were very eventful, filled with interesting activities and memorable experiences.
As I understand it, we've now gathered a certain pool of contacts. Our current task is probably not to send out commercial offers, but rather to collect some feedback, to find out what people are interested in, what they want to see in the future. This will give us some understanding of the demand for various devices.
No, people already have a general understanding of what they need. Yes. For instance, someone says, I wanted to make parts for your airship. And for example, we do need to have some parts made somewhere. Now we need to first we need to sign an NDA with them, a non-disclosure agreement, then send them, say, a part and get a commercial offer from them, just to roughly estimate the cost and compare it with what we have now, as well as with other offers. That's the first thing, a number of questions. Second, there are several design bureaus that were really insistent. We really want to work on airships. We're tired of all these airplanes and helicopters. You have an airship? That's something new. Let us design the gondola. We want to design the cabin interior. Basically, they were there brainstorming ideas with us. But these are huge spaces. There's no need to cram everything in. We can actually do this. Take us on the team. We want to be involved. The BMW designers were there. They happened to be there, working on one of the vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. But it was a cargo one, not for passengers, for cargo. So their design encompassed both the exterior and interior spaces. They're technical designers. When foreigners say designers, for them, an engineer is also a designer. But this was specifically a design bureau. We made an agreement with them. Now we need to send them, roughly speaking, the dimensions of the gondolas. NOVA-8, NOVA-35, what it will look like inside, so they can start working on concept sketches and show us, look, this is how we see it. And then, if something cool comes out of it, we can start collaborating further. Obviously, they don't just want to draw, but also to make money.
Of course, sure.
To promote their services, so that's one set of contacts. The second set of contacts is more specific, for example, with government agencies. They need to send us all the technical requirements for the drone, what standards it needs to meet. We need to study all of this, for example, and shape the design of the drone that will be sent there according to these requirements and correspond with them. For instance, to clarify whether we understood everything correctly or not. We did it this way. Is that okay? Good. All right, we'll be flying to you soon. And they say, okay, we're waiting. So that's a different set of contacts. The third is about a joint project to bring the project to some kind of international market. If it's that pool of contacts in Dubai, and if it is Dubai, then, in short, with each one, targeted work is already beginning. With monitoring airships, yes, we need to clarify exactly which one they need, and the same goes for the small advertising ones. So yes, literally, there's a ton of work.
What I mean is, in any case, even if, for example, they were to put a suitcase full of money right there on the table and say, we truly and genuinely need this kind of airship, are we still not going to, or are we simply unable to deviate from the specific steps and carefully considered plans that we've outlined in our roadmap? Or is there actually perhaps some flexibility possible?
No, we really can't deviate from that plan at all, because it turns out that we actually need airships, both small ones and, as it happens, large ones too. And for us to eventually get to a large airship, we still have to go through an evolutionary process first. We can't just drop everything right now. A client has come along asking for a 30-ton model, but to build a 30-ton airship right away, when we haven't even finished NOVA-2 yet, is impossible. You can't have a baby in 1 month with 9 women. So the plans remain as they are, just as they always have been. That's NOVA-2, NOVA-8 and NOVA-35. But at the same time, we're commercializing the paths we've already taken. We've already completed NOVA-01. People saw it in the video and thought, cool, we want it. Awesome. For this, we want it. We're ready to produce a batch and sell it. Obviously, we need to have a firm agreement about this first. Once we have a solid agreement, we produce and sell them. We've assembled NOVA-2, tested it in unmanned mode, manned mode, and for monitoring. We already understand that a dirigible of this size is within our capabilities. I'm sure that once it takes flight, there will be a real surge of orders. There are already some, so to speak, but it might not be 2,000 cubic meters, but 2,700. Just like it happened with NOVA-01, the point is we've already passed this stage, and now vehicles at this stage can be commercially launched into mass production, NOVA-8, NOVA-35, all according to the same methodology. We're moving towards larger airships.
By the way, is there any particular difficulty in selling airships abroad directly from Russia? Or is it still necessary to create some sort of intermediary, like a separate international company?
Not necessary at all. In fact, we have special mechanisms and systems in our country that are specifically designed to handle exports. Nothing really changes in this process. You can sell to other countries without any issues. In fact, you should sell. The country actively encourages you when you sell. The question that remains is, who exactly is buying? There were guys from Africa. Well, you get the idea. Businessmen are always like, wow, that's really cool. I definitely want to buy it, have it for myself, fly, transport things. That's all clear. There were also people from the government of a country, I don't remember exactly which one, and we discussed this issue with them as well about, okay, we made it in Russia. Just now a gentleman came up and said, I want a dirigible in Africa. You're from the same country, explain it to us. Like, does it have to be certified, or can we, roughly speaking, bring it over disassembled? Assemble it there in Africa and say, look, it's an African product. Will you issue a certificate for it? No, I won't. Africa, issue it, let it fly. No, that's not necessary. Basically, certify it in your own country. Bring it over. We also agreed with him that they have their own specific local regulations. He listed, 7 of them, some detailed laws and regulations. He sent them to us. We haven't processed them yet. He said, read them, and you'll understand everything about drones, manned aircraft, optionally piloted ones, and so on. In some cases, you'll need to obtain a type certificate, and then, with a valid Russian type certificate, there really won't be any issues at all. Just bring it over with you. So the question is, can it be sold from here? It can be sold, sometimes certified, sometimes uncertified. There are no real problems, just different possible paths. Some are longer, some are shorter, and some are more complicated. We have what is called a single item certificate. It has changed somewhat now. It's no longer referred to by that name, but you can still obtain a certificate for individual items, for example. In some countries, they don't even really understand what that is, a single item certificate. Some people say, no problem, if Russia issued the document, we'll just get the local one here. But there will still be a validation procedure, they translate it, the local authorities stamp it to confirm that now the locals also say it's safe, they issue a registration number, and then the person can use it somehow.
But if you do it like this?
Politically, there are problems with selling from Russia. A lot of people came up to us saying, oh, wow, guys, this is awesome, really cool. People from Boeing came up, people from Boeing approached us. And not just anyone, not just random booth visitors. There was a woman there, apparently the deputy commercial director, in short, a high-ranking position. She came up and talked with Boris Alexandrovich. She said, guys, this is so cool, we want to buy a dirigible. Boris Alexandrovich replied, which one? Even the NOVA-2, can you assemble it? We want to buy it. He asked, what do you need it for? Well, why? It's a dirigible after all. We need it, we need it. And she said kindly, we just want to buy it, and so on. Still, people from America and European countries also came up. This is cool, we need it. Oh, Russia. Open a company in Dubai, cut off any Russian ties completely, and we'll buy from you. Well, of course, we need them, they're important, we're from aviation, we understand what this is, the cargo, tourism, it's all really cool. You guys are great, your team is top-notch, but just not from Russia, please. Vitaly and Milad, they went to some private parties. On the very first day, there was a party for the opening. So the exhibition itself took place, it closed at 6 o'clock p.m., and at 7 o'clock p.m. there was a private party. All the big shots were there, let's put it that way. It was a bit of networking, meeting new people. And well, whoever wanted to could drop by, take a look around and enjoy the atmosphere. There was a lot of interaction with Europeans, for the most part. Man, everyone keeps talking about cutting off from Russia. For now, that's probably how it is. Anyway, there was another party the next day, and Vitaly and Milad were working the crowd there too. They both speak English really well and are totally immersed in the topic. As for me, I still found myself listening to the interpreter from time to time, but they just went for it. Everyone says they're ready to develop business, ready to invest money, open, or rather establish an international company here, for example, in Dubai, and that's it. The funds will start flowing, we'll bring you orders, and we'll even buy from you ourselves in reality. And probably, given the current political landscape, they certainly have the right to that opinion. Why not? Overall, it's a fairly common and widely accepted practice to open international companies.
Are we planning to move in that direction at this point in time?
Of course we are. The question is, everything in its own time. Let's get on our feet first.
Maybe by then we won't even need to do anything. Perhaps everything will be resolved.
So just look around. Russia and the CIS are huge, Asia is huge, and there are many countries, Africa, India, they don't care about this politics either. So overall, it's simply impossible to be left without any orders at all. Yes, the only question is when exactly we'll be able to. It'll be easier to enter some markets and harder to enter others. Where should we go? Most likely we should go where it's easier. That's just how nature works. Water flows downhill.
That's right. And did I understand correctly that there is a Russian certificate which we will obtain for our airships, and if it is recognized in the country where the airship is being sold, then in principle they can use it? If it is not recognized, then the certification issue falls on them. They have to resolve this somehow?
Basically, to put it simply, there are certain specific rules and regulations, you could say, that a particular aircraft must adhere to and comply with. Airplane regulations do not fit airships. Helicopter regulations do not fit airships either. There are airship regulations that were once developed in America. Then they were copied and pasted to create European regulations. Later, Russia copied and pasted them to create Russian regulations. And if something changes in one place, eventually everyone updates theirs as well. Some people update them, while some others simply do not. Most of the time, nobody really likes to make changes or risk falling behind. Basically, in terms of their core content, they're essentially identical. Politically, it's considered a Russian certificate. If you read through the requirements, you'll find that they're the same everywhere. After that, it's just politics. It's the same with the African guy. He asks, on what basis are all these regulations in Russia made? We say, on the European basis, international. He says, no problem then. You simply provide us with the Russian certificate, this certification basis. We compare it with ours. If they match point by point, how could we have any questions? So we use this, we don't know yours, but it's the same. No questions, it's just politics. So yes, there is a Russian zone, a European zone, an Asian zone, and an American zone. But when it comes to airships, the standards are the same everywhere, because they were created not centrally, but were copied from each other.
And that's the right way, so that there is one international standard and not all these different types of outlets everywhere?
Well, that's exactly what aviation is aiming for. Airplanes were created mainly to fly between countries. And if I start coming up with my own standard, that's inefficient. Why do that? And that's why they're all more or less the same.
All right, so what are our immediate plans and goals after the exhibition? Or maybe there are some hot directions we're moving toward right now? What are the important tasks we have coming up soon? Hot tasks.
Hot tasks.
We have cold tasks.
My feet are absolutely freezing right now. Where's the heating system in the office? What are the current hot tasks? Aeroplane. Yeah, I knew it already. Actually, Dmitry Sergeyevich Kamel was extremely eager. He kept saying, "Damn, while you're away, we'll get it up in the air." I told him very clearly, "Don't you dare touch the machine while we're gone." Damn, he actually listened to me. Would have been better if he hadn't, honestly. So, what's the plan now? We'll get the aeroplane up and flying before the new year. That's the goal. Less than a month left until then. We'll find out more tomorrow, so... Tomorrow we're going to the airfield. Yeah, so what's the situation? First of all, we're really putting very little effort and resources into the aeroplane. Literally tomorrow, Gina and I will go, and we'll take Dima and Dennis with us as well. We'll be installing the new control system on it. So, what's the situation with it right now? Basically, from the very start, it actually came about in a rush, without much time for planning. Roughly speaking, it almost started as a kind of bet within the company that we'd be able to build it so quickly, faster than anyone expected. It was clear from the start that we wouldn't be able to do it because we weren't the ones making the shell, a third-party company was. Our machines are just sitting there, and they're still sitting there. And there are still issues with the space. Well, what kind of issues? It's a standby mode, there's nothing we can do on our end. We're hostages to the situation. It was another company that did it, and of course they gave us deadlines, but they couldn't meet them. They had never built airships before. They made all sorts of inflatable figures, even flying ones, but not airships, because a toy and a serious machine are two very different things. They kept running into various problems and had to redo things multiple times. Then when they finally managed to make the envelope, it turned out to be a two-part envelope. Dmitry Sergeyevich came up with an inflatable tail at the back. But this tail didn't fit because the shape of the first envelope was wrong. And all those metal structures he had carefully designed didn't fit either. We had to redo those as well, because the envelope's shape had changed after all. So, as a result, we remade everything according to the blueprints, but it turned out it wasn't rigid enough, unfortunately. Dima Orlov, the developer of the control system, and at the same time our remote pilot, he operates the NOVA-01, he said, "I'm not flying this, can't you see? Look at this frame." And the frame really was pretty awful. It probably could have held up, but Dima kept shouting and shouting. So in the end, we started reworking the frame. We decided to play it safe. Yeah, because we were redoing it, Dmitry Sergeyevich jumped in with his brilliant ideas about how it should be. But still, I get that, since the airship is small, its thrust-to-weight ratio is also low. It doesn't have enough volume to even, roughly speaking, carry itself. And on top of that, it's a hybrid and has this huge frame. You want to make everything lighter, thinner, but it all ends up flimsy. At some point, I just said, "That's it, don't mess with it, just close your eyes." Whatever happens, happens. We ended up making a pretty rigid frame. Of course, it turned out a bit heavier than it should have. And the tail also ended up a bit heavier than it was supposed to be. And basically, the airship's balance shifted. That is, its center of gravity should coincide with its center of volume so that it doesn't spin around in the air. So that it flies straight, not like this. Something like that, yeah. And it's also considered a quadcopter type of drone. Alright, with the NOVA-2, the center of gravity actually matches the center of volume, and the specific point where the force is applied on the propellers is located right there as well. It's all much simpler overall, really. And it's also a classic design. It's practically balanced. So it's really simple to handle. You adjust the propellers a little and it moves forward. Then it slowly goes back if you don't do anything with the propellers. You adjust the propellers again and it moves forward once more. So everything is very simple. But with this one, it's not so easy, it's too heavy. You have to generate a crazy amount of thrust with the propellers, and instead of 2 propellers under the center, there are 4. And yes, they have to be arranged so that the center of gravity is in the middle, with the propellers positioned in a square around it. So in theory, everything should be symmetrical. Because the center of gravity shifted to the right or left, it turns out our propellers are slightly misaligned. Tomorrow we'll reposition them. Dmitry Sergeyevich will measure everything again. So, what actually happened? The tail ended up being too heavy, and the center of gravity is too far back. We tried removing the batteries from the frame and placing them in the nose pod, basically moving all the weight forward, but it still wasn't enough. What else did we do? We stripped down the tail, removed some of the reinforcement tubes, and took off the covers there. There won't be a nice white cover there anymore. Instead, there will be a blue cushion. So we managed to lighten it by a few kilograms, just over 4, I think. But with such a long lever arm, the center of gravity still shifted back. That's quite significant, yes. The battery still ended up positioned at the very front, and it seems like it's balanced well enough for now. Tomorrow we'll move the gondola a bit more, and we will definitely move it tomorrow. The center of gravity will shift again, but that's only a minor issue. That's one thing. What else? 2. As for the helium we put in it back then, well, the airship has another feature. With the classic one, why were there no questions or problems with it? Why did it fly and come together so quickly in the first place? The NOVA-01 has a front landing gear strut and a rear landing gear strut with a single rear wheel. It's needed so that during takeoff and landing, if it happens to take off with a bit of a run, it doesn't touch the ground with the wheel. Yes, and so that the tail assembly doesn't touch the ground and it can safely take off, so to speak. And an airship, a properly balanced airship, has this feature. You can use it to determine how much helium there is. Helium is hard to measure. Yes, there are flow meters, there are pressure sensors on the tanks, but it's still more or less a rough estimate. Basically, you keep adding helium, adding, and it stands on the front landing gear, resting on the rear wheel. You keep pouring helium into it, pouring, and then at some point, bam, just like that, and the axis of the airship becomes parallel to the ground. That's it. That means it has the right amount of helium. It means it's balanced, and it's only touching the ground at that one calculated point. But with a hybrid airship, that's not the case at all. It's too heavy. Its tail won't lift up like that, and basically, there's no indicator. Nothing visual like that. Yeah, that it's properly balanced, that it's filled with the right amount of helium, and so on. And also, because it's low, the ceiling is low, that is, the distance from the envelope to the ground in the AEROLÖT is small. The craft itself is quite large, but the ceiling is low. It's impossible to lift it up to climb in and check how much the ballonette is filled. Basically, when we centered it back then, before Dubai, there wasn't enough helium. It became clear. It looks like it's filled. Now you look at it, the airship is filled, that's it. It has 3 contact points, it's sitting on scales, you check the weight, it's too heavy. Did you weigh everything? We weighed it, and somehow everything seems to add up, but when you start calculating, it turns out the center of gravity wasn't just shifting backward because it's heavy here, but also because the helium wasn't fully filled. You add helium and the same effect should happen there, but it doesn't because it's way too heavy. It's a hybrid. You can't see this clearly. And just like that, the center of gravity shifted. Overall, the balancing process is extremely complicated, both because the metal parts were modified and because it's not a classic design, there are all sorts of methods involved. For example, when we went to assemble the NOVA-01, Boris Alexandrovich and Vadim Vasilyevich gave us a manual. And you follow the manual.
Everything has been done, everything has been invented.
Yeah, it's just steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you're done. Assembled, ready to fly, and off you go. Pretty cool. But for hybrids, there are no such manuals, and we're relying entirely on experience. Experience, and feeling our way through. Plus, it's different. It behaves differently, even in the hangar while you're working on it. And once we more or less finished with the balancing, the deadline started to stretch out as well. Moving, yeah, the exhibition. It was either the move or getting ready for the exhibition, or going to Yakutia, or Dmitry Sergeyevich being pulled away for this stratosphere project. So, as you can imagine, we didn't really have enough time for AEROLÖT. We were, so to speak, sacrificing our reputation just a bit by giving you certain deadlines, but of course, as you know, it was all for the greater good of the company and its future. The controllers, as I mentioned before, I think I showed them back then, were sitting there like this, waiting and watching. Here's the controller, it's because of it, and so on. Dima checked these controllers 100 times, everything was supposed to work. The last time we went to the airfield, Dima turns them on, and they don't work.
Maybe they froze, maybe they just got tired, but they don't work.
No, they didn't freeze and they weren't tired. I can't remember what this radio component is called. It looks like this. In the well-known store chain Chip and DIP, they're sold under a specific label. Their specifications are written. At what voltage, for example, it should trigger, open, and so on. They were purchased, soldered in, and during laboratory tests, this function on the board did not work. But everything seemed fine. When everything was assembled on site and turned on, it didn't work at all. We started figuring out why, carefully checked everything, and discovered that, as it turns out, the data sheet for this component, I don't remember exactly what it's called, had different values, meaning it required a different voltage and so on. We desoldered everything, soldered in different components, and tomorrow we're going back to install it all again. In general, the process is long, complicated, and iterative, but everything is moving in the right direction. Are we going to fly tomorrow? Of course not. We're not flying. Tomorrow we'll install the controllers and we'll finally bring it to life. The airship will truly come alive, and now its WGS system will operate automatically on its own instead of being forced manually. The propellers will start spinning. Each one will rotate independently, and it'll even wag its tail. But there's still a lot more interesting and exciting stuff ahead. First of all, let's talk about the final assembly. Because we keep moving the batteries around during the process, these wires go back and forth, they all seem ready, but putting it all together still takes quite a bit of time, usually about 2 to 3 days in total. But since there's no heating in the hangar and our fingers are absolutely freezing, the whole process will probably take a little bit longer than usual. I think we'll start doing some short test flights very soon. The test flights will look like this. Provided that, first of all, there won't be any more buts. Although I do know of one but in particular that could potentially happen. And that's the servos on the tail control surfaces. Vadim Vasilievich installed really powerful large ones on the NOVA-01. They were excessive, but I understand why he did it. On the 030 or the 012 in short on previous airships, they would overheat. I mean, according to calculations, they handled everything. They seemed to work fine both on the ground and in flight, but then suddenly, after some time, some of the servos would just shut off. Later on, it turned out that it was simply overheating. They would go into safe mode, cool down, turn back on, and everything would work again. It's not cool when something fails during flight. When it turns back on, cool. When it shuts off, not cool. Vadim Vasilievich, with his usual caution and past experience, said, "Machines like these, more powerful ones. The servos will be installed here, and everything works perfectly." Dmitry Sergeyevich didn't have that kind of bad experience, so he chose smaller servos, much smaller ones. Of course, the data sheet for the servo says that everything matches the specs. Yeah, what torque on the shaft, all that stuff. According to the calculations, everything matches up. But of course, you have to take into account that the torque is probably listed as Chinese torque, just like the Chinese volts they put on batteries. You have to make a bit of an allowance for that. And considering that overall there were a lot of inaccuracies and all that, I don't know. What if the servos don't work? Of course, we'll just quickly grab some others. We have them. But that will drag out the timing again a bit. In short, I hope they work. Even if they fail, we'll still do the approaches. Approaches? It'll all look just like on NOVA-01 when we were at the new releases. When we bring the airship out in completely calm weather, the air is still and is tethered. Dima starts the propellers, the airship begins to take off. Dima turns off the propellers, the airship lands, that's it, and we just watch how it behaves. Then a bit higher, a bit farther, a bit higher again, and so on. There's also one small problem here. The NOVA-01 is almost perfectly balanced. When it lands, slowly, smoothly, softly, yes, and this rigid craft. And here, it's unlikely you'll be able to do those kinds of takeoffs, taking off and landing vertically. But this craft has a transitional mode. That is, at the moment when the NOVA-01 tilts its rotors, it can, so to speak, turn them off, tilt them, switch from generating vertical thrust to horizontal, turn them back on and continue on its way smoothly. Here, this is the transition mode. It will be very interesting to see how the craft behaves in this scenario. That's one thing. Most likely everything will be perfectly fine because we're not going to make it much heavier. But still it will be heavier here, so it will naturally be harder for it to take off vertically. If we turn everything off, it will descend faster than the Nova, so it might land hard. Everything has been calculated, and most likely nothing will break, but it will be scary, at least for me. It will be interesting. Yeah, we'll do the approaches without any problem. What will be interesting is how it behaves in flight. That is, as long as it takes off and lands vertically, it's still, roughly speaking, a quadcopter with aerostatic unloading. Its aerostatics still keep it centered, meaning it's pulled upward, while this force pulls it downward. It's like a roly-poly toy. It can't flip over like a poorly tuned quadcopter or like a small airplane whose engines have failed. It simply can't fall like that. It's still like a roly-poly toy, but it's quite a heavy one. So, in that sense, doing these kinds of approaches, for example, taking off and slowly flying over the airfield, that's fine, no problem. The real questions, or rather, something new, will come up when it starts to accelerate. That's when aerodynamics really start to come into play. Yes, and aerodynamics will gradually start to kick in. If, for example, these side rudders were actually controllable, and if we also added front ones, just like we wanted to, on our propeller is mounted on a boom. It rotates around the boom. If the little wing also rotated with the propeller, we would have both front and rear control surfaces. These are planned for the AEROLÖT family. It's just a bit more complex and takes more time. I wanted to say it would be simpler, but actually it wouldn't be. The control algorithm for the device would become more complicated. In general, aerodynamic forces would start to come into play. The question is, how will it behave in that situation? Of course, theoretically, it's more or less predictable, but what will actually happen? And we'll find out. Yes, the shape is still a little different from what was calculated. Both the shell itself and the fins, which we put together in a hurry, are also a bit different. So most likely it will fly. The question is, how well does it actually work? There can be all sorts of different things happening when the device is aerodynamic. For example, according to the algorithms that were set in advance and configured everywhere throughout the system, Dima doesn't have a remote to control every little detail separately, independently. Yeah, he's not a circus performer. Basically, what we're programming in is that, say, if he pushes to the side, the propellers adjust their thrust, they turn, and the wings tilt. Basically, we're programming in certain algorithms, and anything can happen. Dima might want it to fly forward, but for example, because of its aerodynamics, it might constantly try to veer off in that direction. We'll have to nudge it down just a bit and adjust the controls. Then it might start behaving a little oddly. All these oddities, that's what testing the aeroplane is really about. We'll observe the strange behavior, land it, tweak something in the algorithms, and then launch it again. We might even carefully detach this side fin, change its angle just a bit, and then reattach it securely. We'll see what happens. And that's what we'll be doing over the next couple of months. Of course, New Year, the holidays, no one has cancelled those. Everyone wants to take a break, everyone really... Although, who knows? You can't get them out of the office. Maybe by January 2nd, we'll all be back here and flying again. It will still depend on the weather. By the way, snow is actually good. If it falls on its belly in the snow, it won't hurt. It'll be softer. Yeah, but hopefully nothing will fall. Everything should work as planned. So that's the current situation with the AEROLÖT. We've ultimately gotten very close to the important testing phase. If everything's fine with the steering servos, tomorrow we'll know about the controllers. Most likely they'll be okay. If everything starts up, then we'll do the final assembly and move on to testing. That's about it. Do we have any plans for NOVA-01? Or are we putting it on hold for a while and focusing on the AEROLÖT and NOVA-2 for now? NOVA-01 has been developed, but not completely, and we've started manufacturing it. But again, we've only just begun working on the automated cart that charges it, brings it in and out, and so on. Everything is clear and fully understood with that. The airship is flying. Someone wanted to come and see how it flies. I guess that's possible. It's cold in the hangar, but it's possible. Everything is clear with it. It has fulfilled its minimum mission. That is, it has provided us with all the dynamic models. For NOVA-2, the control system works perfectly, all the algorithms are fine-tuned. Yes, we can continue, for example, to refine the software for automatic control, loitering, altitude, and so on and so forth, based on it. All of this can be done, but it's not the top priority. Most likely, yes, once the AEROLÖT takes off and lands, we'll settle down with the AEROLÖT. We need to establish a flight test complex. You see for yourself, it's hard to be both in the office and at the production site, and also to travel there. That is, to assign separate engineers who would constantly be logging hours and gaining experience there. That would be great. For now, we simply do not have that opportunity, and that is why things are the way they are. We'll decide on the work as we go. Most likely we will switch to the NOVA-01, to the software platform, and to the automated carts.
On the ground vehicles, yes, that's also very important.
As for the AEROLÖT, even if it performs really well and impressively, right now all our efforts are concentrated on NOVA-2 at this point in time. We'll finish up the AEROLÖT and most likely we'll mothball it for a while. It's time to get the big airship up in the air.
Is there anything perhaps to share about it? Well, actually, right before you left for Dubai, you gave a pretty thorough and detailed update on NOVA-2. If I recall correctly, Vadim Vasilyevich said that about 90% of the work is already done, right?
It's just that painstaking work is underway. All the 3D models are being finalized with the engineers, double-checked. For example, they draw some bracket. The engineer looks at it and says, "How am I supposed to machine this? Let's move this wall over here." These little details are being worked out further. What gets resolved is passed on to production. What isn't resolved, they keep working on. Right now we're designing a mooring mast for it. We finished the second cycle of EVA tests.
Small EVAs, yes, I suppose.
That's also one of the cool things that happened. There are analytical, statistical, and various old methods for designing propellers, ducted fans, and so on. And according to those methods, things were designed, flown, spun, and operated. Of course, they worked differently, as you might expect. If anyone still thinks that aircraft propellers have been thoroughly studied for a very long time, that you can just design one, launch it, and it will have 100% efficiency, that's absolutely not the case. In reality, it is still a complex and challenging science. In general, one of our specialists took a very meticulous and careful approach to numerically modeling the propellers that had been designed, and he discovered certain anomalies. He said, "It can be done better." But how can it be done better? That's how it's always been done. He designed it slightly better, at least as he saw fit. Well, not just as he saw fit. Of course, his judgment was based on CFD models, which showed impressive visuals. There was less flow separation. The flow was nicely laminar, not swirling. All those velocity diagrams looked correct, and he said, "See, this is better." But by that point, we were already approaching the stage of launching production with an external organization. We simply handed over the detailed drawings, and they immediately started making these rings for us. For a while, the process was put on hold, and they argued among themselves for a long time. In the end, they just printed 2 sets, one like this and one like that. Obviously, just making them smaller actually wouldn't prove anything. We recalculated the small ring using the classical method, and then recalculated it using the new methodology. We tested one, then there was a move. After the move was finished, we tested the second one just a short while ago. And yes, the new ring is 30% more powerful. That's awesome. It's great that we didn't start production earlier. There's actually not much to redo, because overall it's composite. You could say semi-monolithic, only the shape changed. But we got 30% more thrust. So when are you going to post it?
I'm working on it.
You're working on creating it?
Actually, I have the material already. I just want to package it nicely, maybe a video with a clear timeline of events and a more detailed explanation of what's what and why.
So, the ducted fan on our NOVA-2 will be efficient, cool, and 100% functional. And that's really awesome, actually, because in our country, efficient ducted propulsors were probably only made back in the Soviet Union.
And by the way, it was generally found after careful evaluation that using these ducted fan engines is actually a very effective idea, mainly because they also consider just the blade itself. By the way, did they also at any point test them without the ring?
Of course, in general there have always been debates about ducted fan engines in aviation circles. Why do you even need that ring? The propeller is already widely considered to be highly efficient. Just make the propeller a bit longer by the width of the ring and you'll get the same result. But sometimes the ring is simply needed for protection even. At the very least, yes, because our engine nacelle is inside the gondola and you have a door nearby. Whether you want to or not, you'll end up putting a ring around it and a shell. Overall, there are a lot of questions. You need to shield the propellers. Shield the propellers. If you're shielding them, why not make a ring that also gives extra thrust? But does it really give extra thrust? According to theory, it does, but those who built it didn't get any extra thrust. For these guys, it didn't work well either. Plus, you get extra weight. And why deal with all these vibrations? There are a lot of questions. But now, with the small rings, we've definitely seen a 30% increase in thrust. More precisely, that's 30% even compared to that previous ring. And compared to a bare propeller, in general, it's a solid advantage. So in any case, the ring was needed at least as a protective structure since it also adds to the thrust. Excellent.
It works.
If you mount the propellers on the envelope up there, you probably won't need to use ducted fans at all. The propeller just spins calmly and that's it. It won't reach or endanger people. And honestly, it's much cheaper to simply make a regular propeller, basically. But in the NOVA-2, that's impossible. We made things a bit more complicated for ourselves by choosing a small airship, but at the same time, we also made things simpler. So nothing to worry about. Everything's fine.
All right, I suggest we smoothly move on to the questions. We've already been talking for an hour and 20 minutes, so we need to set aside some time for questions. Let me open them up now. So Ruslan asks a question. At the very beginning of the project, it was announced that AERONOVA is the parent company and would be Russian. Please confirm that this still remains the case, even if there are any options involving investors from foreign countries who are ready and willing to cover a certain part or portion of the funding. This question is especially relevant and important following the recent trip to Dubai.
Nothing will change. The parent company, the one that is financed through the current platform, remains the parent company. There was talk about it being Russian, but there will still be a question about capitalization. On which market to do it and which company is the beneficiary of all the main profit. In general, everything will be carried out exactly as planned. At this time, no one is planning to move any assets, resources, or anything like that anywhere else. I just can't tell you for sure, with complete certainty, yes, that's exactly how it will be, because that's simply impossible. If, for example, it turns out to be more profitable for us to open a company branch in Hong Kong, transfer all the intellectual property there, go public, quickly grow the company, and for everyone to get rich fast, why not do that? But of course, all the intellectual potential is here. All of us are here in Russia, the developers are in Russia, everything is in Russia.
All right, so when is it planned to launch the NOVA-2 with the gondola, the 3D model of which was posted in the chat? Next year, as we look forward.
Honestly, yes, a lot has set us back. The lack of space for shell production has hit us really hard. According to our plan, we were supposed to be there by September. Roughly speaking, start welding something in October, get the shell in November, and already start installing things there in December. But it didn't work out that way with the space. What was available, like just take it, was incredibly expensive. The prices were unbelievable. Even the rent was outrageous. So everything kept getting pushed back and back. So we kept pushing things back. There was the long, deep winter and then one thing after another. I actually talk a lot about deadlines. Everyone in the office is always scolding me about deadlines. Even now, Uliana is sitting right behind the camera shaking her fist at me. Basically, you're just way too optimistic about life. But really, yes, that's true. What else can I possibly do? How else am I supposed to look at it, honestly? If I say it'll fly in the spring, they'll start scolding me again. They scold me. In the summer too, they do the same thing. Alright, next question. Are you personally and completely satisfied with your participation in the exhibition? Was it truly worth going? What are your overall impressions? I want to go back to the previous question. Basically, if everything works out with the space in December, then in January we'll set up the equipment, and by February we'll already have the shell and the gondola. Can we fly at full capacity right away? Fists are flying. Of course, we're satisfied. It was an awesome exhibition. First of all, we really made a splash worldwide. Everyone came up to us. Even Russian fighter pilots came by, and guys from Boeing and people from NASA, and everyone said, "It's great that someone is working on airships. We believe in them." Everyone's just busy with their own work, so come on guys, go for it. We're all behind you. In other words, airships definitely have a future. So it's awesome that we put ourselves out there, that we're doing this. It's great that we met people who will help us develop all of this and potential clients who actually need it. Of course, it was extremely useful overall. We were even shown on TV, which was a truly memorable experience.
Yeah, and some international publishers reached out to us.
Yeah. By the way, not just in Russia. We were actually shown on TV in many different countries, published in various magazines. And there were even scientific reviews written about us. There was absolutely no end to the reporters either. Just recently, Uliana, where was it?
In the Netherlands, I think, right? Yes, in the Netherlands, that's correct, absolutely, definitely.
There was a review about us in some well-known magazine recently. That's actually pretty cool, isn't it?
So, how's it going with your new office these days? Is the renovation completely finished?
Well, my feet are still absolutely freezing cold, to be honest, pretty much. Actually, compared to how it was before, it's finished. Basically, the very last problem that we encountered here was with the heating system. I honestly do not know why that is. Both we ourselves and the landlord were involved in the renovations. For the most part, the lion's share of the work and effort was on him, because when we first chose the space, it was completely empty and bare. There were only the perimeter walls, a concrete floor, and a ceiling, and that was it. And we agreed with him, yes, we'll rent it, that's why the price was so attractive, and so on. No one had to wait for anything or get involved in any renovations. Basically, he handled the walls, air conditioners, electrical work, and so on, the floor. In short, he took care of all that. Of course, we also fixed up some things at our own expense here. And all the deadlines kept getting pushed further and further back. He needed to rent it out quickly too. He was like, "We'll get everything done in a month." But with the previous office, we were already told goodbye. We moved in here and it was still a complete mess. Now it seems like everything's okay. But on the right side of the office, we still have an issue with the heating. In the lab, we had to run the heating pipes along the ceiling and then bring them down. Because of that drop, the system doesn't circulate properly now. On that side, we already ran into the same issue. We installed a pump there, and now we need to put a pump on this side too. The studio is closer to that wing, so it's still cold here. But overall, for the most part, everything is almost finished. The air conditioning guys finished just days ago. The electrical work was also done days ago. Before that, whenever we came to the office, there were ladders everywhere. Someone was sawing, someone was welding, dust was always flying, and there was nowhere else to go. We were already here. Everyone is arranging furniture in their offices. Then the workers come in and move everything out of the way, because they need to get up to the ceiling to work on some ventilation. Everything is still constantly being redone. For some reason, they were just, I don't know, it was honestly the strangest work crew ever. I hope you guys aren't watching this webinar, because we still need you to finish a few things for us.
But overall, the work is almost finished, right?
Yes, we're already getting back to normal operations, to full working mode. At least people's desks aren't being moved anymore, the electricity works, and we have internet. The server, finally the computing center has restarted since it's in the server room. It actually works almost like a heater on its own, but it needed cooling. Only last night did we finally get the air conditioner running in the server room and started up the computing system. Now the analysts have their computing power back. Overall, the personal workspaces are ready. Just a few small things remain to finish, so it's pleasant to walk into the office, not like opening the door to a pile of construction debris. Just a little bit, just a tiny bit left.
All right, next question. Will the technology be protected in any way or by any specific means? How exactly will cooperation be organized and managed? Will the critically important components be developed in-house or perhaps in Russia or possibly elsewhere?
Yes, the critically important components are the people and the knowledge, the design methodologies and so on. That's already protected, in a sense. The entry barrier here is quite high. You can't just...
Simply jump in without experience?
Right. A chef can't just take a car and say, "Oh, now I have a car, I'll make the same thing." No, man, it doesn't work like that. Of course, you also need to patent some key solutions, patent the external appearance, names, designs, and main layouts. And by the way, we got excited again after Milad, our friend, found that website just yesterday, where a group of engineers from SpaceX announced that they're going to build airships. And the airship enthusiasts quickly perked up. Damn, they have tons of money. Now they're patenting everything left and right. It's going to be hard for us. We need to do it too. In general, of course, all of this was planned, naturally. And apparently now we'll have to speed things up because of these guys, since there really weren't any serious players before. And these players with money, they actually encourage things to move just a little bit faster, such as in this direction. But in reality, we're still a long way off from any actual patent disputes or legal protection. Let someone actually build a working dirigible first, and then we can figure out who stole what from whom, if anyone did at all. But right now, there's no one to steal from, because at this point, there's really nothing to steal. You can, of course, patent a series of possible solutions well in advance. But what kind of claim would you need to make to go after someone? Hey, your dirigible is rigid, but the Germans patented that 1,000 years ago. Especially now in Russia, in general, this issue is very complicated. Here, it's still at a rather early stage. We need to speed things up, that's a fact. We need to expand the team. Right now, there's nowhere to go, or really nothing to go on, so this is still in the planning stage. Let them fly first. Besides, if we're talking about protection, as I understand it, the question might have been, you're going to Saudi Arabia now. How will you protect yourselves there? Everything is fine there are no issues, everything is handled legally, it's clear who owns what. One thing belongs to one party, another to someone else, and so on. On the contrary, a major partner might even step in to defend this joint product or shared project. There's no point in trying to squeeze it out of him. He lacks expertise in many areas. On the contrary, it makes sense for him to protect the whole thing. So actually, this even works to our advantage. The only thing is, I really do think that we'll need to take the issue of software protection much more seriously from now on. We'll also take investor rights protection much more seriously, with even greater diligence and commitment. I think that's the right answer, I'm pretty sure. Yes, of course. So, is it possible, in this context, to provide for the possibility of new investments from individuals if the deal with the strategic partner is successfully reviewed? Once again, I didn't quite understand either. Is it possible to allow new investments from individuals if the deal with the strategic partner is successfully reviewed? I think if a major investor comes in, I understand. Ask Pavel Filipov. The strategy probably hasn't changed. The crowd investment will continue to its logical conclusion, no matter who comes in or where. We've already discussed this even with the same Saudis and so on. They said, but you're developing in Moscow now. They're just curious. We said, yes, we are developing. They said, so why aren't you starting to build something in Dubai? Are you kidding me? Even if you're developing some process here, generally speaking, even if you have some available money, even if you have some additional extra funds, starting parallel projects is still a very significant expense. So even if some strategic partner comes in for the international part of this business, we still have plenty to do ourselves, up to self-sufficiency, so to speak. Although further scaling is possible down the line, why not? So what's going on with the NOVA-35 model? What's happening with the NOVA-35 model? The NOVA-35 has just started its second assembly phase. The team is putting it together right now. After the webinar, we'll do a quick video update in real time. It's being assembled. They started assembling it in the previous office. Then the office began moving, so they had to take it apart. Only now, after sorting out the furniture and making space, they've started putting it back together right away. Honestly, they started assembling it so unexpectedly. I didn't even notice. It wasn't there yesterday or earlier today. Then I walk over. It's already halfway assembled. I ask, how did you do that? Why not call Gina? I'm shouting, Gina! At the same time, I realize the webinar is about to start. So the NOVA-35 mock-up was actually already prepared and ready back then. Now there's finally enough space available for it. They're carefully reassembling it in order to run some important tests. It really does look quite beautiful, of course. Yeah, I think that's about it for me, honestly. Well, I've completely run out of questions to ask. Let me check one more time. If there aren't any new ones, then we'll wrap up. The NOVA-35 mock-up will effectively demonstrate the overall viability of the concept that Vadim Vasilievich has been developing for quite a long time. And we also help to further refine it here. If everything works as planned, then we have a technology for building rigid airships that, in terms of efficiency, probably surpasses the material consumption of past vehicles many times over, like the Hindenburg, for example. But also considering that the material usage and consumption, for example, the number of, say, axles per node, it used to be 5, now it's down to 2, significantly less than before. But also taking into account that they're now made of carbon, they're even lighter, so we end up with a rigid airship with much more interesting and remarkable properties overall. Cheaper, lighter, faster, stronger. It's actually really cool, honestly. I even want to break away from the day-to-day operations and just fantasize again about how we'll assemble it and imagine how truly huge it's going to be. But that's not for now. We need to build hangars for it, solve a bunch of issues. Okay, and the last question, are we planning to participate in any more exhibitions? Maybe there are already some in mind where we'd like to take part. Honestly, I don't want to participate anywhere at all. I just want to get to work. Because it's great, it's awesome to talk to everyone, wow. It takes so much energy. There's already a huge amount of work here that really needs to be done, just without any distractions. At least half a year without moving around, without any major upheavals like Dubai and so on. Point. And focus on what is most important. Of course.
Alright friends, so I suggest we wrap up here. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Be sure to leave some reactions, write comments, give us feedback on what kind of content you're expecting, what you'd like to see in the future, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Maybe you could start posting something about the microturbine. Yeah, I can do that.
By the way, some really interesting information about microturbines is already prepared and will be released soon, so be sure to check it out. It's a fascinating field and very promising.
Yeah, friends, the market there is so huge that even the airship market might be a bit smaller. Yeah, it's funny, but it needs to be done, and it's tough too. But fortunately, our Chinese brothers are willing and prepared to help.
The main issue there is really in the manufacturing, as we have seen.
Basically, to master microturbine production ourselves, the design part is fully mastered, the computing center is buzzing, the wheels are being calculated. There are some interesting artifacts that, for example, I hadn't encountered before. For instance, there's the hot wheel of a microturbine. It's about this size, let's say, I won't specify exactly what size, like this. And when it finally reaches its optimal operating temperature and full rotational speed, its diameter actually increases by a total of 5 millimeters. I mean, okay, like, you spin some piece of metal, sure, maybe it expands a bit, maybe even from the heat, but not by 5 millimeters, I mean, and it's made from a heat-resistant alloy called ZHS6U. You can look it up to see what that is. You could even make cutting tools out of it to cut through metal, and there are so many interesting things about it. So basically they designed it, but in order to, let's say, master the production process and have it be fully ours, turnkey, so to speak, such a facility would cost 1.5 billion rubles. Andrei Veniaminovich has already done these calculations. He is the chief developer of these microturbines. He comes from a family of microturbine specialists. In general, there have already been attempts to set up such production facilities with government funding and so on. I won't say anything about that for now, and probably won't in the future either. In short, a turnkey factory costs 1.5 billion when you start from the foundation and end with mass production. That's an unbearable amount of money, just unreal in the current circumstances. But, for example, if you manufacture certain components here, there, and maybe keep some small part of the process for yourself, of course, assembly and adjustment, all of that can be done here anyway. Now, the heat exchanger. For example, in this microturbine, the heat exchanger is actually a real know-how. In general, the heat exchanger itself is a very impressive product. It's a high-tech item in its own right. It's used practically everywhere, and the class of heat exchangers we've designed now, even without the microturbine, it's a product in its own right. In other words, we'd like to master its production, but for that you still need space, special equipment, people, time, money, and so on. For now, we're currently sending out the parts, so to speak. These guys get the shafts, those get the wheels, over there the bushings, somewhere else the compressor supports, and elsewhere the turbine supports. We're distributing it all in pieces, carefully checking prices, and then putting it all together. Now we have an idea of how much it will roughly cost. That's how it is for now.
Is this partly carried out to protect some kind of intellectual property, perhaps?
Partly, yes, because, well, very few countries actually have turbines like these. In fact, no one else has them. The Japanese have them, the Americans have them, the Chinese are trying to get there. Russia doesn't have such a product, and neither does the rest of the world. This is a very promising field. For example, take hybrid cars. They have an ICE, a buffer battery, and basically electric motor consumers. The wheels are spinning, and if you remove the ICE from here and put in a micro turbine of the same power with a heat exchanger, it will take up less space. From it, there's even a car like the Lixiang L9, for example. Some friends of mine have one. It seems like an electric car, a hybrid, all that, but the engine still vibrates, makes noise, you can hear it. It's funny, when it's in extra generation mode, you can really hear it. This one you can't hear at all. It doesn't vibrate at all, and with the Lixiang they have to go in for maintenance quite often because the engine is constantly running at high RPMs, so the oil and other things need to be changed frequently. These have a much longer lifespan, and the interval between maintenance is also much longer. Overall, they're like the next stage of development, you could say. When it comes to burning fuel and converting it into some form of energy, mechanical or electrical, a turbine with a heat exchanger is definitely a cut above the rest.
Can we expect to see these cars here sometime soon?
Yes, and they will be here soon. The Chinese will be mass producing them, and our own manufacturers as well, so I'll let you in on a little secret. Basically, there are already clear requests for how many units, what power output, how many thousands of units, and what power they need as range extenders for hybrid electric vehicles, even those produced domestically. Yes, in general, the market is absolutely huge, truly immense. And these advanced turbines, for example, the one we've just recently designed, it's great to use it as a highly efficient power plant. For example, at construction sites, at concerts, in remote areas, they usually bring in diesel generators and so on. What was making that noise? Generators based on microturbines can easily enter this market, and they have a huge advantage over diesel engines. They can start up even in extreme cold. They actually work even better in the cold. They can run on virtually any kind of fuel. Of course, you'll need to tweak them a bit to suit your specific needs and preferences. But you can even run them on coal dust if you want to, which is quite impressive. That's the main advantage. Overall, it's a very serious and reliable product.
They're likely planned to be used in airships.
Airships without microturbines are just helium wasted, as they say. Yes, as they say, even earlier, the airship engineers Vadim Vasilievich, of course, designed those airships that actually flew. But even the ones they were developing for the future, they designed them specifically with this kind of microturbine. And what's funny is that they had already been working together with Andrei Veniaminovich many years ago, 15, 20, maybe even more, on exactly this very issue. They told him, "We're designing a really cool and innovative airship. You're a well-known microturbine developer. Can we collaborate?" And he said, "Sure, just give me the necessary money for the turbine." Damn, but we're also looking for money for a huge airship ourselves. So somehow it just happened by chance that meeting in this office, well, we understood that when it comes to the airship's propulsion system overall, it's difficult and no one really has one. And yet in Russia, we do have a number of, roughly speaking, developers who are genuinely trying to master the serial production of aircraft engines. But still, an aircraft engine is not in itself the complete solution. What we need is an engine that generates electricity on board, because for an airship it's better to have many distributed electric motors and so on. And what can generate that? These microturbines are modern solutions. It turns out that in Russia there's Andrei Veniaminovich with a whole team. So, Andrei Veniaminovich, we need your help. And he goes, no problem. And that's how the microturbine was born.
Friends, here's some interesting information for those who stayed until the end. These are post-credits scenes for those who stuck with us. Should we say goodbye? I actually wanted to tell you a little bit more about it.
Basically, these microturbines are considered to be super high-level advanced technology. There are extremely huge, massive turbines that burn, for example, different types of gas fuel with enormous wheels spinning that are as big as or even bigger than this entire room. For example, Gazprom made some, for instance, together with Siemens, and so on and so forth. There are medium or intermediate-sized turbines, which are typically producing several megawatts. There are also ones that are capable of producing several hundred kilowatts. That's the kind we specifically designed. They can actually be even smaller and even smaller still. In fact, there are ongoing technological developments for microturbines of this size running on a small hydrogen canister. This is still in the process of development. They don't exist yet. They were made for the military, developed some time ago. That was quite a while back, not exactly like that, okay? So, this kind of microturbine, let's say, could deliver a couple of kilowatts of constant power while consuming very little. The rotational speed was insane, unbelievable. Because of these crazy speeds, all the electrical components get smaller, but that brings a lot of problems and so on. In general, these devices can actually be quite miniature in size. And as you make the microturbine even smaller, obviously there will be certain issues and challenges that arise. You can look it up. Basically, it gets to the point where they can even be built directly into cell phones, which is quite remarkable when you think about it.
No way.
Yes, and roughly speaking, their energy output density would, in fact, actually be higher than that of lithium batteries. So you would have a really micro turbine. For example, there could be some kind of advanced solid fuel cell with hydrogen inside. So naturally it would take up some space, have a certain amount of weight, and it would generate more energy than... So theoretically they can actually be made that small now at the present time. Anything is possible. In fact, there are essentially no boundaries or restrictions. The only question is setting up production. A turbine is a great converter of the chemical energy contained in fuel into electricity.
I think they're following the path of computer chips. They used to make them huge and then smaller and smaller and smaller. Now they're down to nanometers.
Something like that. In general, it's a fascinating topic. Obviously, it's kind of mind-blowing. But a 300 kilowatt turbine isn't science fiction. It can be made here and now. And it has huge potential for further upgrades. For example, we're still going to make it with regular bearings. If they're regular, that means with oil and so on. Why is that? Because it's simpler that way, it definitely works, and there are no risks. For example, you could also use air bearings, then there's no oil, no friction, the lifespan increases and so on. It's a bit more complicated that way, because these are air bearings, these are more precision parts. So overall there's a certain risk involved. And you can keep improving and improving. What we're doing is already really cool and impressive. You can make it even cooler. Let's see.
At what stage are we currently at right now in this direction, please?
We've completely finished the development. Now we're looking for a chain of partners who can help us manufacture it. Do you have candidates in mind?
Yes, of course.
There are both Russian companies and foreign companies. When the Chinese engineers saw just one compressor wheel, they practically lost it, truly astonished. They said we urgently need to set up a joint venture. They said just in China alone we need turbines like this.
A lot?
Yes, they named the number of units and how much they cost. Expensive. A lot. Interesting, we'll see. We're in talks with the Chinese. For example, we spoke with the Koreans at an exhibition in Dubai. They have these plate springs, kind of wavy, ring-shaped ones. These are fairly complex products of seals. The Koreans said, yes, we can do it. This exhibition even provided us with valuable assistance in that regard, as it discovered and presented some possible options. There are also carbon seals there, all sorts of little things, but still interesting, high-tech products that Ivan Petrovich at the lathe can't just whip up out of nowhere. We're basically evaluating the cost of producing them. Of course, this is all for the future. We're all focused on the NOVA-2. It's running on a gasoline UL power engine. There's nothing to invent there. The risks are minimal. Everything's already been invented. We're just designing around it. All right, that's approximately it. Friends, we're in touch with everyone. Let us stay connected. Time to get to work.
Yes, we will be back on air in 2 weeks, so please join us then. We are looking forward to having you with us, and we will talk about something new. Do not miss it.
Yeah, keep bugging Gina for updates. Make sure he posts something more often. Will do.
All right, goodbye everyone. Yes, thank you all, dear friends, and take care. See you all very soon.
Solar Group presents. This was once just a dream of the skies, the freedom of flight, of round-the-world journeys. Yet we've made it happen. But what did it take? Our dreams became our goals. Our concepts turned into our plans. Our ideas have transformed into a roadmap and production technology. And the years ahead are booked out with development and construction, components and materials, model manufacturing and testing. All this marks the progress from dream to result. Join us on this journey. Solar Group presents a new generation of airships. The best way to predict the future is to create it, so let's do so together.